Hello and welcome, everybody. My name is Julie Annixter. I'm the Executive Editor of Innovation Excellence, and it is my pleasure to welcome you today to Tapping Diverse Student Teams to Find New Growth Opportunities with my friends here from Hult International Business School and the IXL Center here in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Before we get started today, I just want to go over a couple of housekeeping items so that you can really participate in today's event. As you probably know, because you've done these before, you have an opportunity and, in fact, an imperative to ask questions. And you can do that in two ways. You can submit your questions to today's presenters, to Ron and the other corporate leaders, by typing your questions into the pane of your control panel. You can send those questions in at any time. We're going to collect them and address them during a lively Q&A session at the end. Or if you prefer to ask a question verbally, and talk directly to Ron and the others, you can raise your hand by clicking on the hand raising icon on the grab tab at the top left of your control panel. Finally, if you have joined the webinar by telephone, please enter your PIN number, which can be found in the audio pane of your control panel, so that we may unmute your line and you may ask your question. If you've joined listening over your computer system, speaker by default, we will mute and unmute you. So those are our housekeeping objectives, and with that, I'm going to get underway. I am really excited about today's webinar. Here at Innovation Excellence, we have the greatest respect for Hult University and for the Center for Innovation, Excellence, and Leadership here in Cambridge. Before we get started, I just want to acknowledge a few people that have helped make this possible. First, there are the Hult corporate relations staff who work throughout the year to make partnerships like the ones you're going to hear about today possible. So thanks to Peter Russell for your work here on the East Coast, Laura Cohen for your work in the southern U.S. and South America, and Tanya Levine, who gets to oversee the entire worldwide team. Sounds like an exciting job. So we're happy to have you participating. I'd also like to acknowledge the IXL Center as your work around developing and running these Innovation Olympics programs at the Hult International Business School is a huge endeavor, especially considering that this competition happens at 7 global campuses concurrently over an intensive 6-week period. Speaking of IXL Center, on today's panel, Ron Jonash, who's sitting next to me, is IXL Senior Partner and a Hult Professor. We don't have time to go into the amazing innovation career that Ron has led, but let me just say it's stellar. He's one of the true innovators that I know. And he's going to be talking about the frameworks of the program. And again, if you, as the audience, have questions on how the program is run, Ron will be available. What is equally exciting is that we have a fantastic panel of innovation practitioners, people who do the real world innovation work in some of the top companies in the world today. And we're very lucky to have Jose Escobar from Verizon, Jeff Nesnow, formerly from Iron Mountain, Stefan Klauschka from Boehringer Ingelheim, and unfortunately or fortunately, we don't have Romulo Zamberlan from Natura because his wife just gave birth this past weekend. So congratulations to you guys. And of course, congratulations to Stefan as well, who's calling in from home because he too has a newborn. So thanks to all of our panelists. They're all past sponsors of the Hult Innovation Olympics. And so they're going to spend some time talking about their personal experiences and, again, answer any questions you have. So without further ado, I'd like to pass it on to Ron Jonash, who will share how the program is run and everything you want to know about it.
So thank you, Julie. It's been a great pleasure working with Julie over the past few years. As many of you on the call may know, we also run a major competition with the Clinton Global Initiative and the Hult Prize, where we have 350 teams from different universities around the world compete to come up with the best solution to social enterprise challenges. What we're going to talk about today is the competitive program we run with Hult Business School students around the world. This exciting action program has been run for 5 years at different Hult campuses around the world: Boston, Dubai, London, San Francisco, Sao Paulo, Shanghai, and New York for this year. And over these years, it's become an incredibly powerful learning and innovation tool that produces fantastic new ideas and opportunities for sponsoring companies. It does this by combining or having diverse and competing student teams use proven tools and frameworks to come up with the best solutions to challenges posed by their sponsoring organization. And so today we've kind of improved it gradually over the past 5 or 6 years. We think we have, and are confident we have a incredibly powerful program now, which is why we're doing this webinar. As Hult continues to grow, it is now the largest and most international business school in the world, and so we increasingly reach out to additional sponsors throughout the world for these exciting programs. So we want to share our lessons learned as well as real-world experiences from the sponsors, so I'd like to get to that as soon as possible. I'll provide a brief 5-minute overview, and then the sponsors will share their experiences for 20 minutes, and then we'll have 20 minutes of Q&A. The program itself is a capstone program, so the competing student teams work virtually full-time over a period of 6 weeks. It's run for the Hult International Business School in conjunction with the IXL Center, where we are also all professors at the Hult Business School. Hult is, as I said, the largest and most international business school now in the world. It offers a unique 1-year MBA program at all 6 and now 7 of our campuses. It's highly focused on action learning and practical application. Students rotate campuses, so they get experiences in different parts of the world, and this is their capstone program where they work in competing teams to come up with great options for their sponsoring organizations. IXL helps deliver this program for Hult because we have focused on both capability building and accelerated results for clients throughout the world, and particularly for sponsors of the AP programs. The programs are all geared to solve a real innovation and growth issue for sponsoring clients. A list of those clients, or some of those clients, is shown on the page that you're looking at now. We also run a similar program for our MIB students, Masters in International Business, that is run sequentially in another 6-week period immediately following this. The webinar today, however, is focused on the MBA program, which we call the Hult Innovation Olympics. In that Hult Innovation Olympics, and you'll hear a little bit from each of the participating sponsors today, there's a campus director who manages all the clients and makes sure that the clients are well served by their mentors and teams. The mentors provide a critical function to serve the clients and make sure that they triage questions that come from the competing teams and handle all of the communications traffic between the client and the competing teams. And then on each of the teams there are 4 to 6 students per team who come from an incredibly diverse background. No country has more than 10% of the student body at Hult. Virtually every team has somebody from a different country on a team, a different industry background, different functional background, and so the whole program and the richness of the ideas that come from it are based in part on the diversity and freshness of perspective that these teams kind of bring to your organization. So just quickly on how the program's organized, there are kind of 5 basic steps that happen over a 6-week period. First is they get clarity around the innovation intent and the real targets that you're trying to achieve as a company. They then gather as rapidly and widely as possible in a collaborative manner all of the idea fragments, the individual idea dots as we call them, and arrange them in a way that they can begin to be combined so that in the 3rd week they can put together the most attractive and exciting fields of play, and then after presenting those and getting guidance from the client at the end of week 3, they then develop in each of their respective fields of play, sometimes the same, sometimes different. They develop individual business concepts. They again get feedback again from the client at the end of week 4 and develop more compelling business cases and present to the client, and they know that the client is going to be issuing them the final grade, essentially force ranking the teams and declaring winners. And then there's in addition a campus winner. So each client has a winning team, each campus has a campus winner, and then there's a global winner. So the competitive juices are really flowing kind of very significantly, and that's what part of what creates the great progress, great success and ideas that come out of this. Just before I turn it over to the panelists to discuss their experiences, a quick review of the gives and gets. So sponsors give the most pressing and real innovation or growth challenge they face as a company. They come to 4 half-day meetings in which they listen to presentations and provide feedback. Those can either be at Hult or at the company's location. There's a fee to cover the mentoring and program costs of $25,000. And for this year, the key dates, the program runs from May 19th through June 17th. So that's essentially what the sponsors provide. What they get is they get 25 experienced mid-career MBA students from across industries and around the world who are working virtually full-time for them for 6 weeks on 5 competing teams. They get a portfolio of alternative solutions from these teams, 20 potential concepts, and 20 larger, more broadly defined opportunity spaces to drive growth in their company. They get 5 exciting and insightful mini business plans, so each team ends up with one kind of preferred business plan that they think is most exciting for the client. They get mentorship and coaching both to guide the teams and to minimize any disruptions that the teams might create in the questions they have for the sponsor. And then the sponsor gets access and exposure to the software and tools that are used by the teams to kind of generate these ideas over a very accelerated period of time. So that's the basic gives and gets, and with that, I'd like to turn it over to the 3 people who are going to share their experiences with you. Jose Escobar first from Verizon, then Stefan from Boehringer Ingelheim, then Jeff from Iron Mountain, and then Roberto Ruiz will, since he managed a lot of the teams for Natura, will give a brief overview of kind of Romulo's experience. So let's start with Jose.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you for inviting me to this webinar, and welcome everybody on that is listening. Well, let me start by saying what I do and share a little bit my experience in Verizon. So I'm part of a group that is called the Global Strategy Team. We look for new markets, new solutions, and some of the activities included there are discovery as well as execution of some of these ideas. Ideally, in a world, 50% of my time will be on discovery and 50% of it in execution. But what happens in reality is that I spend probably 10% of my time on discovery, 90% on execution. And the execution involves M&A activities, venture investments, and strategic alliances, and design the go-to-market strategies for those companies. So Verizon has been a sponsor of the action projects for the last 4 years, and I've been lucky enough to be a participant and a client. I actually participated when I was a student at Hult, and then I ran the program for Verizon itself. I have the pleasure to work with more than 100 students over the past 3 years on different projects, some of them on government solutions, some of them on healthcare space, some of them on open innovation, energy. And I think what is really interesting out of all these projects has been the discovery piece that I was alluding at the beginning. Students have really helped to come up with valuable insights and opportunities that otherwise our team or inside our company would be hard to tackle or identify. Another interesting point out of the experience that we have had is de-risking these opportunities. And what I mean with that is when we are in a large corporation, sometimes I will compare that as an overprotective parent. And you really want to do the best but you're too scared to take some actions. And really going into an educational environment really helps to come up with bold ideas, things that you wouldn't consider on a normal environment. Then I think other important points out of the outputs that we have received is the research and the fresh ideas that the students come up with, and the global view that they provide to these solutions. So most of the students, given their international background, their experience around the world, really come up with something that is very unique, and they put together things that are definitely targeting the 21st century. Then we took some of those concepts and we work on pursuit teams. We have been exploring some of those initiatives, but I think what is really good out of this project is getting the energy of the students, participating, working, and collaborating with them. And I think from the perspective of a client, you can get as much as you want, depending on how much effort you are also willing to provide. That's in a nutshell what I've experienced with the AP projects. I would say is really centered around the students and their process to become professionals or to finalize their MBA program. They really want to succeed, and the competitive environment really makes them excel at what they do. So with that, I would like to pass it to Jeff.
Thank you very much. I engaged this project really to focus on an opportunity that was in a very different industry and that I didn't have the internal resources to go after. At that time, part of my role at Iron Mountain was to look for new growth opportunities, new places for us to invest, new ways to do some of the things that we did. And I started with some hypotheses about where opportunities may lie in sort of a broad category. But I didn't have much research or background when I started. I really had a full-time job doing other things. I had some ideas about a space. This was a great way to, in a very short period of time, figure out if there was anything there and what those things might look like. Here's what I got out of it. I learned a lot about the target space. I found some great new technology and opportunities. I refined some of my own hypotheses, found some dead ends, which in a lot of cases are worth their weight in gold. In other words, if you figure out that something you thought was true isn't. And through the process, I was actually able to learn some other things about our core business through the lens of the students. You know, part of the process was to engage them and give them a sense of who we were as an organization, in addition to looking at this new space. And so they brought some fresh perspective to that. I also got some great engagement through this process with other people inside my organization who otherwise might not have been involved in something like this, especially something that was so far out of our core as was the focus of this project. Helped us refine some of our own internal innovation processes, some of our internal expectations, gave us a little bit of a sense of where the boundaries should be. In some cases maybe wider, in some cases maybe narrower. We also got a great intern and did some additional work with both IXL and some Hult students as a result of this. A few key learnings through the process. 5 minutes of context about your organization and about the space is probably worth a day to the students in terms of time it will save them. The more information you can give them more quickly in the process pays huge dividends, because they could spend the entire time trying to understand what you are from annual reports and filings, and maybe get there, maybe not, but if you can save them the time, pays huge dividends. Along the same lines, it's very, very helpful to check in regularly. It was convenient for me to do that in person, and that helped a lot. Part of that was to understand where they were going, maybe guide them, push them back in a few places, or say, you know, hey, that sounds like a great opportunity, but it's so far away that we'll never do that. So let's come back to, you know, at least a little closer to reality, or maybe combine a few things together. And the other thing that I found very helpful was, especially near the end, was to help through my own personal experience, having made many pitches inside my organization and elsewhere, to help frame the nature of those pitches. You know, set some expectations that they needed to think of it like they were going in asking for money. So in that context, they needed to have the basic questions answered. They needed to have some of the basic assumptions, some of the I's dotted and T's crossed, but they also weren't at the point to ask for the money, so they didn't need to have everything. So it was really about helping them build that compelling narrative and get some of the basics. To end a couple of very pleasant surprises or other learnings through the process, it was critically important to have a professional mentor involved in this. I don't think it would have worked otherwise. And IXL and Bert particularly were extremely helpful in doing that. It was, you know, an exercise in herding cats in some ways, or would have been. But to me, what I got was about the amount of work it would have taken to have 1 or 2 interns. And I got 20 to 25 students working, you know, very much organized around the things I was looking to have them work on. The diversity of the student teams and the students themselves was really powerful. Gave some new perspectives, especially some international angles that I just would never have thought of. And the last thing was that the competitive team structure was very, very important and very powerful. You know, people tend to be very competitive in a school environment, probably even more so, and that competitive nature really drove people to perform better, to put in the extra hours, to do some extra polishing that they might not otherwise have done. And I think it was a very, very important part of the process. That was it. Thank you.
All right. This is Stefan Klaschka. I guess it's my turn now.
It is, Stefan. Go ahead.
And I could just echo what my previous speaker said. We had very similar experiences. Now, let me quickly say what I do and where I come from. So I'm representing the largest privately held pharmaceutical company, Boehringer Ingelheim. We're in animal health as well as in human pharmaceuticals, which is our main business. And we wanted to try something different. So my job is global innovation management within this company, looking inside the company, trying to change the mindset of our employees through entrepreneuring, these kind of things, but also bringing in fresh ideas. And I want to combine these 2 elements and here bring in fresh ideas through this amazing opportunity with Hult that we jumped on, I think, last minute, I would say. So we divided our teams, or our students, into 5 teams, gave them some very big topics to chew on, given the changing landscape in healthcare and in the pharmaceutical business. There's so much to consider and so much to understand for us, and given all these changes that are coming upon us. That we were actually amazed what these students came up with in 6 weeks, in only 6 weeks. So we got a number of great opportunities, new business models that require a different kind of thinking than what you would get if you ask people within the company. Also, one of my previous speakers mentioned bold ideas. A business mindset for new business can trigger call it the organizational immune system if these ideas come from the inside. So you need some ideas from the outside. And then also the expertise, of course, that comes in from these diverse aspects of the students, and this very robust and powerful process that Hult applies here, that was tested many times across a spectrum of industries with great success, came in very handy for us. So we got some ideas that we really have not expected, some that we did expect, and our learnings on that end are we should take a little more time to prepare the students about what we're actually doing inside before we ask them some questions for new ideas. So there was some redundancy, and that was perfectly okay. There were some absolutely bright new ideas, some angles that we haven't thought of, and I really appreciated that they brought in some business thoughts of, for example, saying, well, we understand, one team said that we understand that human pharmaceuticals are your main business, you're number 12 worldwide or something like that, but actually you're number 6 in animal health. Smaller market, but you know, this is still a huge market. and they focused on that. And the animal health business was quite surprised by the results that, the proposals that were developed, to a point that we now have a very close conversation with animal health on how we can exploit these opportunities, or also inspire them to use these kind of opportunities with these action teams to look a different way into their business. They thought they were alone within the bigger company, and now they see there's ways of getting fresh ideas in that really have some substance that they were not expecting. So we were so impressed that we brought in the 5 teams that we had on site and video around the world in our organization, 46,000 employees or so in 140 countries, to share the final presentations of these teams, which was very well received, and was a great experience not only to work with the IXL Center and with Hult, but also with all the students. We were still in contact. Actually, I was very that we have hired a Hult graduate last year. I think we hired more than one, but I found this person, and he helped me to manage this relations here with these action teams this time around. And as a result, we actually hired one of the participants of the action teams this year, who's working with me right now. So, I mean, what else do you need on success stories? Well, there were some learnings, of course. So next time around, we will take more time to talk about the legal framework of the pharmaceutical business, which is highly regulated and requires some deeper insight that would be helpful to be more targeted with proposals. And we also found some internal processes that we could streamline due to the experience that we went through, and that was very beneficial for us as well. So the bottom line was a great experience for us, and we're looking forward to do it again.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you, Stefan. I'd now like to have Roberto Ruiz share some of his experiences. He's a previous Hult grad, also a associate here at IXL, and he coached a number of the teams for Natura, and so he's kind of a stand-in for Romulo, who, as Julie mentioned, has a newborn at home, so he's not joining us. So, Roberto?
Sure. Thanks, Ron. So, Natura is a fun and very cool company. For those that don't know, Natura is a Brazilian-based company in the industry of cosmetics. They have 1.5 million direct sales consultants selling a lot of their products that are mostly green, sustainable, and it's a company that focus on doing innovation around experience. So everything they do is how to create a better and more powerful experience to their current customers that they have. They presented an interesting challenge last year. They don't have any presence in the U.S. Their main market is in Brazil, and they wanted to start to have a footprint in the U.S. And their idea was to build an innovation center, and the city they choose for that is Boston. So for 6 weeks, these students from Hult worked very hard and presented the best model for them to start and jumpstart a innovation center here in Cambridge, Massachusetts. It was an interesting challenge, and the great thing about it and the result was that the Natura now, today, as we speak, they have an innovation center. They have a small office right now at the Cambridge Innovation Center here. So that was a very good example of how these ideas can turn actually into implementation very fast. How they did it, right after they finished the program, they worked closely with 2 interns, graduate interns. They started implementing some of these ideas, and the great thing is, it's not only one idea that was the best from the winning team, to put it that way. What they did is they combined all the different ideas from the rest of the teams and make something bigger. And that created high impact. They were able to convince the management down in Brazil. They got the budget approved for that. And right now they're running an operation, a successful one, where they trying to tap into new ideas, work with partners here in the US to get new ideas, fresh ideas that can be transferred back to the core business in Brazil. And so far they're doing fantastic. I was a mentor for that team. I also have been working closely with Romulo Samberland, that is the head of the Innovation Center here. And I think that's a great example of how you can move things very fast and move the needle and create high impact in your company by leveraging, a very diverse source of students, bright students from all around the world, and make things happen very fast. So that's what I have to say on a very high level about Natura. I don't know if somebody else would like to share something else, Ron, before we move to the Q&A.
I was just going to echo something that Roberto said, and this is Jose from Verizon. I think the piece that is really interesting is how the students tackle real challenges. And I think that's something that I really like about the project. And it's real challenges in a very short period of time with clear results. So that makes that very suitable for businesses. That was a good point that you made. Thanks.
Before we turn to the audience, thank you very much, Jose. Before we turn to the audience for questions, I'd like to kick off with one. So you've all had the personal experience of working with these teams from Hult over 6 weeks. And you also, I know, have a lot of talented, smart, creative colleagues that you work on innovation projects with. What was the primary difference working with students versus working with your colleagues?
I'll start with on that question. I think that maybe it's intuitive, but they're unbounded, and while unbounded doesn't necessarily automatically equate to great results. It does sort of cause you to think about things in a different way, and it doesn't. You don't get stuck in the same traps of, oh, we tried that and it doesn't work, or oh, somebody thought about that before. You often can find really new, really important insights by kind of starting from scratch and not carrying all of the baggage or assumptions that the people who have who do it for a living and have seen it play out a few times might carry with them.
Cool, thank you. How about you, Stefan, or you, Jose?
Yes, so I think what I really like about the students is that they are out of the cultural, like I think it's very aligned with what Jeff is saying. They are out of the cultural landscape in the company. They are not tied to the political things that happen inside an organization, and I think they are open to discuss topics that otherwise would be on the parking lot or what would be discussed on the organization. The other piece that I really like about the students is that they might have a need of showing that what they are proposing is real, and they come up with really good facts that are hard to debate. And I think that's a very powerful argument.
Thank you.
So Stefan, Stefan here. What is good students bring to the table is not only good ideas, but a great way of presenting them as well in a well-rounded way. So based on a business case, and they did their research that we sometimes don't see when people come up with ideas within the company, do come up with visuals that really bring across the point better than a 100-page report. So this is what we learned from these teams, and we use that internally as well for skill building and entrepreneuring. So that was a great experience. What we also see is just this amazing focus and flexibility to come up with 5 or 6 opportunities 1 week, and we say, okay, take 1 and 5 and continue with those, or just take number 3. And drill down. Next week they come up with the next 5. Drills down to from the point that we were a week before, and coming up with new ideas and new opportunities. And it's very well done. Very fast, very reliable. You have this 6 weeks, which is great because you know that you get results by the end of these 6 weeks. Something that you can't always receive within the organization. You have a large organization, and that's just a natural thing. Thanks.
Well, it sounds like you all had pretty strong contrasts and got a lot of value out of working with students. We'd love to get any questions or comments or discussion from the audience, and while we're asking you to do that, and again, you can just type it in the question box, or you can raise your hand and we'll call on you and open up your mic. But in the meantime, while we're looking for some questions, Ron, let me ask you, as you hear all these guys talk about their experiences, what questions does it bring to mind for you?
Well, I think one of the questions that has been asked by a couple of you is the how does this differ from more traditional kind of academic extension programs? And I think while a couple of you alluded to the kind of practical nature of the recommendations that came from the teams, I wondered if you could comment about that, because I think that is, at least my understanding from what you all have shared with us before, that's a major differentiation here in the sense that the focus from the get-go is on actionable, implementable solutions. So I don't know, Jose, if you want to start, or who wants to start on that question.
Well, Stefan here, I have some input on that, because we came up with a few questions that or challenges that to the students, and put some constraints on there. So we wanted to have at least a certain revenue generated by that idea, or we gave them a certain amount of resources that you cannot exceed X amount of dollars to implement it. What would you do with that? So that's a constraint that we usually don't do with academic programs per se, and they require a very, very strong business focus and understanding of the marketplace to come up with sustainable ideas. Thanks.
Yeah, this is Jose here. I think the students are really hungry for experience, and that really drives that kind of their behavior in terms of coming up with ideas. So that's one piece, Ron, to your point. And based a little bit also with the previous question, I think the students, since they find themselves on this competitive environment, and some of them are not of this particular industry or the other industry, they don't have experience on that industry, that helps them to provide different perspectives as well. Like they haven't been 10 years, 15 years on the same industry, which brings a lot of different perspectives, which are really valuable for the business itself.
It was really like having 5 startups, with an executive team or whatever you call the founders, sitting around the table trying to figure out how to get their angel funding or their Series A funding for new business ideas. And so I think that maybe sums up sort of the experience, and it was very different, at least from my experience, from other programs that tend to be sort of, here's a PowerPoint slide at the end, or PowerPoint deck at the end. This was much more, these were hungry entrepreneurs, building a business case.
So a couple of you have also asked kind of about next steps and how you can learn more. I think the last page in a moment will give you kind of a list of people you can contact, but in general, I think the best way this proceeds with different potential sponsors is to kind of share, to talk to us and share your situation, the kinds of challenges the company faces, to see if the program, in fact, can really target the kinds of solutions you're looking for, and if so, then we can craft a challenge that will work for these teams and make sure it gets out to the teams early next year so that they have a chance to do some pre-work before the program starts officially in mid-May. So that's kind of an answer to the next steps question. A question I'd like to ask forward to the participants again has to do with the speed with which they can do. There seems to be a couple questions here about how can these teams who have not worked in my company come up with solutions in just 6 weeks. So if you could comment either on why you think they can or whether they can. It seems to be a question, I don't know, maybe some healthy skepticism, but if you could kind of share your views on how they can do this in 6 weeks.
This is Jeff. Stefan, did you want to go?
Sure. So what we did to prepare the students was an introduction of our company, what we do. There's so much information already out there on the websites that they had researched before we spoke to them. I was pretty amazed by some questions that were asked that peppered us actually in the first session to really understand what we're doing, why we're not doing the things that they think we should do. That was in the first meeting, we actually wanted to present our challenge. I was really impressed with the background research that was done already at that point, unexpectedly. We also, upon request, connected students with people within our company if they had specific questions. So I think I mentioned animal health before. There was questions about the animal health business, and we found the business development people there who met with the students to give them insights from within the company. And that was more answering questions on like an hour a week or something like that. So very, very targeted. I was actually impressed how these students were able to understand our business to a very large extent. Well, some teams are better than others, but that's natural. But how much understanding they brought into a very complex business that we thought would take forever to actually understand. So this was an experience for us. It was the first time we used this process with the action teams, and I must say I'm still impressed how that actually worked out with us giving limited input. Thanks.
Anybody else want to comment on the question of speed?
Sure. This is Jeff. I think that I sort of go back to what I was describing before, and I think if you asked the question differently and thought about 5 startups looking to organize their thoughts in a highly iterative process with a variety of experts available to them, both for the company and sponsor side, but also the school, the faculty, and the people at IXL, it sort of starts to be. It becomes a little less mythical and much more sort of pragmatic. You can sort of get the idea if you were focusing with a group of 5 or 6 people organized around the same thing for 6 weeks and had all those resources and a passion. That sort of gets a sense of how you can come up with some interesting things relatively quickly.
Yeah, and just to add a quick comment, it's the structure and the process itself which saves them a lot of time. That, like to your point, Jeff, when you're starting something, you probably don't know where to start, and if you have a process and a structure built for you, that saves you a lot of time, and you can focus on the 80% that is going to deliver the big results. So I think it's sometimes you don't think that they can do that. Right. If you provide the right starting information, they can follow the process and the framework, so they can deliver.
It was like a perfect incubator. They don't have to worry about their paycheck coming in while they're doing this. They don't have day jobs. Yeah, this is it. They get to focus on this.
Exactly.
Julie, we have a question from Judy Stryker. She'd like to ask it live. Go ahead, Judy.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm calling in from South Africa. I am running the Innovation Hub for a niche insurance company. And our Innovation Hub is still very much in infancy. We started about a year ago. And without boring you with the detail, we moved from actual product development implementation into really trying to understand and get our hands and minds around innovation. So my question relates to, first of all, the return on investment that some of the participants have seen or anticipate to see on the $25,000 investment being made into this challenge. Although I understand that it is still early days, if you look at May to June up to now, you probably still work on projected revenue growth, first of all. Secondly, I'm trying to understand the ratio from ideation or ideas being generated through what falls out at the bottom in terms of actually shippable, implemented revenue generating concepts.
This is Jeff. I'll take a quick, at least my version, a quick stab at that. On the question of the return, I looking at it through the lens of the larger corporation that I was a part of, it was short money compared to sort of a consulting engagement, which was sort of the alternative approach. So it very quickly got us 5 teams focusing on an area that would have been much more expensive to do through an outside firm. And in terms of what came back, it wasn't just ideas on a whiteboard. It wasn't the napkin sketches. It wasn't completely ironed out, tight business cases. But certainly there were strong narratives. There were facts to support those narratives. There were some financial characteristics associated with those narratives. So they were good starting points. I mean, that's what we got out of it in 6 weeks. And for that kind of cost, there didn't seem to, I haven't found a better way to get that kind of result out of that kind of cost.
Yeah, and just to add on, in terms of the ROI for a project like this, I think you'd have a longer span or a longer time frame to start coming to see the results. But what is really interesting is you can develop ideas that you wouldn't otherwise do. Generally what happens is you are so focused on the daily activities, the day-to-day, that you don't invest enough time on the projects that are gonna really change or bring the new revenues for the company. So although all the ideas, at least in our projects, were focused on revenue generating opportunities, and we didn't do that on 6 weeks, some of those ideas were incubated enough so we can start building the teams to get to that point in 1 or 2 years.
Any other questions or comments? We're coming up on the end of the time, so thank you everybody for participating. Again, if, as we said earlier, if you'd like samples of the kinds of deliverables the teams come up with, or further information on the program, on this last page there are a list of the people you can contact, and we look forward to talking with you further. So thank you everybody for joining us today.